This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is. The Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. It's episode 240 from the Subway to Shea studios in my office. Make sure you're following Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can follow me personally at Ant Rivera 86. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you prefer to listen. But if you want to be a part of the chat, you want to be a part of the conversation, you're doing that right here on YouTube. You can do it on X as well, but YouTube is the place to be. And you can support the show with super chat, super stickers, super thanks, all available on YouTube. If you are in the Northeast right now, apologies, I'm with you, because there is a snowstorm coming and it's just never ending. I don't know. Get me to spring in the Northeast immediately. That's the first thing. Hopefully you all are safe at home and don't go out there in this weather. Secondly, if you know me, huge hockey fan. Congratulations to Team USA, not only the men's, but the women as well, for taking home the gold against Team Canada for both games, and the men doing it for the first time since the Miracle on Ice in 1980. Appreciate everyone for being a part of the chat. We got 30 people in the room to start the show so far. Shout out to Armand in the chat. Aaron in there as well. Jeff Cohen, appreciate you. The I'd Hit That podcast. My guy Ant, appreciate you as well. Green Machine, always great having you as well. G Money Stacks, Carlos Ortiz, appreciate Maureen in the chat. Appreciate you for being a part of the show. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of what's to come for... Actually, what came this past week with the New York Mets, and a lot of stuff went down. The Mets started their spring training games. They had a good week of practice to go along with that. And, I had this show last Sunday night, so I missed out on what Steve Cohen had to talk about during his initial meeting on Monday. So we're going to break that down as well. And here to join me, he's doing double duty today. Just fresh off of Blunt Thoughts with my guy Hector. Make sure you check out that from earlier on a couple hours ago. But Tony Metro, the man himself, here with me live from PSL, doing God's work and covering the New York Mets right now. Tony, my friend, how's it going? It's first time for you to be on this show. Appreciate you, my friend. Oh, I think you're muted.
Apologies. Sorry. I had these struggles with Hector as well. So sorry about that. I am so pleased to be here. Thank you for having me as a guest. We're down here in Port St. Lucie, and it's my real first true spring training. I went to a game last year, but just one single game. So it's been really, really cool to get to go to some of the open practices, to meet a lot of fans and other content creators and people that cover the team. So it's been really, really fun, and I'm super excited to be here with you.
I appreciate you as always, Tony. And we chatted up. We got our little group chat with the content creators, and it's always good chatting with you in there and finally getting you on the show. Let's get right into it. This week in Mets camp, I want to get your biggest takeaways and observations, but I got one to give you first, and it's a pretty big one. Just seeing the different demeanor from Juan Soto from year to year is quite the difference. I mean, he came in last year. We kind of expected him to be a leader right off the bat, right? I mean, he's making $800 million. He's the new star of the team, and you kind of expected him to come in, be another leader to the team, and he was kind of more reserved, kind of sitting back, I guess, kind of learning the ways of being a New York Met. This spring, totally different player. Totally different person, totally different personality. You see him hanging out with Luis Robert Jr. They're always together. Him chatting and having fun with Francisco Alvarez, just being more, I guess, present with his teammates. Not to say he wasn't last year. It's just, you could just tell he's having more fun, and it's a different atmosphere. And, I guess even with all these guys leaving, the Nimos and Alonsos of the world, the more emphasis now on Soto to be another leader in the clubhouse.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And this is something that I saw right from the jump was just how loose he looks. Last year, obviously, hits the home run in his spring training debut with the team last year. And then the regular season didn't exactly get off to a great start for Juan Soto. And of course, there's always going to be trolls of the Mets that are saying, oh, Juan Soto is miserable. But look, I think you'd kind of have to be turning a blind eye to not kind of acknowledge that he didn't look like he was very comfortable in the first portion of last season. That's been the complete antithesis of what I've seen so far this year, or in spring training, I should say. He looks way more comfortable. He is joking with teammates, and you keyed in on it. And I posted a video earlier this week on Twitter and all the other platforms. Him and Luis Robert Jr. walking into the big league field at Clover Park this week. Hopefully taking him under his wing. Kind of funny to say, considering they're almost the same age. I think Robert's actually a bit older, but obviously Soto's had a bit more success now at this point in their careers. But he definitely does look like a guy that now understands this is where I'm going to be for the next 15 years. This is where one day, hopefully, fingers crossed, he'll go into the Hall of Fame, Cooperstown, wearing a New York Mets cap. And I am really excited to see what he brings to the table here. Numbers wise, we know what we're going to get for the most part. And if last season was a down year where maybe he didn't feel himself, I think we'd sign up for that once again, considering 40 plus home runs, 30 plus stolen bases, and all the other intangibles that he brought.
It only felt like a down year because he struggled hitting with runners in scoring position. Now, I don't know if that's a hitting philosophy because guess what? The entire team outside of Pete Alonso and some big at-bats from Brandon Nimmo, the rest of them struggled. Even Lindor had his struggles with runners in scoring position. So, him hitting the 41 home runs, stealing the most bases he's ever did in his career, like almost tripling what he stole in previous years. So, the guy's only 26, 27 years old. And he's going to be a big part, like you said, over the next 15 years of his future is huge, a part of this franchise. And if they can somehow, win a World Series with him as a part of this team, that is going to go a long way, not only for his legacy, because he already has a world championship with the Washington Nationals. It would be his third time going to a World Series because he went with the Yankees in 2024. And this will be just such a huge moment in Mets history to have this guy who is now the franchise player of the team deliver such a big moment for the Mets. Green Machine in the chat saying it's Juan Soto's team now, and he knows it, and he looks at ease, and he does. I don't know if it's his team per se, but we are getting closer and closer to that, where players feel comfortable being by him. I think I don't know if you may have posted it or if I read it somewhere that initially Carson Bench was next to him in the locker room. So that tells you a lot, putting a rookie, a kid that's trying to become a major leaguer. Even he talked about him during the press conferences in him moving to left field, how important it was for Carson Bench to be a part of this team. So not only is he going to be a leader to, the clubhouse as a whole, but to these younger guys trying to make it to the major leagues, it feels like that as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And if you recall in his initial press conference when he was introduced as a Met in the offseason 24 to 25, he said how he believes in the future of this organization, that he believed in the farm system and the vision that David Stearns and Steve Cohen have. And a big reason for that is because of the prospects, because of the farm system, because of what they have tried to develop here and bring to the big leagues. So while it's been a little bit of a tough offseason for us, losing a lot of homegrown or even just beloved Mets from the past couple of years, I do believe that there is going to be a really impressive group of guys coming up, this next wave of baby Mets, if you want to call them that. And it is up to Soto. It is up to Lindor, those kinds of guys to bring them along the way and help them become pros.
Jeff Cohen in the chat, leaning into what you're talking about. Lindor and Soto without distractions should be an awesome tandem. Once Lindor gets back from the hamate bone injury, which seems to be progressing faster and faster, I had a feeling that his progression would be a little bit faster than Francisco Alvarez was back last season or 2024. He's gotten hit in the hand so many times that I can't even remember, if it was last year or the season before that where he had that surgery on the hand for that. But Lindor seems to be progressing well. He's got the cast off. He's doing drills with the team. You even see him. You talk about leadership. This guy's out there. He doesn't have to be out there, but he's out there, coaching the guys at shortstop, working with Ronnie Mauricio, helping out the infielders where he can. And that's great to see as well.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, I was shocked to see that they took the cast off of his hand as fast as they did and replaced it with that little brace. Obviously, it's his glove hand, so they're not going to rush him into any type of infield work right away or hitting for that matter. But it's really great to see that he is taking all of his stuff seriously, which, of course, it's a time thing, but he's a consummate professional, Francisco Lindor. I know he wants to be on the field as badly as we want him on the field. And look, at the end of the day, if he misses the first week of the regular season, we're not going to be upset about it if he ends up having a really strong year and the Mets are trending toward a playoff berth and hopefully making a deep run into October. So my advice to fans and the way I'm looking at it is don't get too bogged down if he misses opening day or even the first week of games. Just hope that he's there when it matters the most down the stretch.
Yeah, I know he's progressing quickly, but I wouldn't rush this. This is the perfect time for him to get himself healed up 100%. And whether he's ready on opening day or not, they have other options that they can throw out there to start the season because we're going to need him 100% the rest of the way through. Now, I want to know what some of your biggest takeaways, some of your biggest observations have been throughout this week as you were at the camp.
I would say the biggest thing has just kind of been the energy there. It's kind of like spring hopes eternal, the cliche where every team and every fan base is feeling really good about themselves. Even the, worst, the dregs of Major League Baseball are feeling like they have a chance. But I feel like the change was necessary, and it may have been painful losing Pete, losing Edwin Diaz, trading Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil, I think to a lesser degree, but I felt like change was necessary for this core, for this organization. And it does feel like a new energy at camp so far. You got Freddie Peralta out there with the pitching staff. He looks like he's been here since he debuted for the last 5 years, just cracking jokes with the rest of the guys. You got Jorge Polanco doing his work at first base, to be determined if that's going to work out or not. But he seems to be putting his nose down and really trying to learn that position. Bo Bichette, of course. I just mentioned with Hector on Friday when we arrived at open camp or open practice, they told us players won't be out till 10:30. They allow us to enter at 9:30. At 9:31, the second we walked in, Bo Bichette was out there taking ground balls at third base with Kai Correa, the Mets' new bench coach. So he's putting the work in and getting the reps in as well. So I think it is a motivated group. I think it is a group that maybe doesn't truly have its identity quite yet because it is still relatively new, but one that I think has a lot of positive feelings and energy toward this upcoming year.
I know that Carlos Mendoza had his press conference, a good little tidbit here and we talked about not rushing Francisco Lindor. He talked about Luis Robert Jr., Jorge Polanco, Brett Beatty, as well as Francisco Alvarez not being rushed into game time and kind of sitting back a little bit, not rushing them so fast. A couple of them have dealt with injuries over the past that they want to get ahead of. I feel like no Mets fan should be nervous about this because of the fact that we dealt with this last year and the year before that with Brandon Nimmo. He didn't get into games until the second, third week of spring training just so they could play prevention. And I think that's huge, especially for a guy like Luis Robert Jr., who has the lower injuries to his body. He had hamstring strains. He had hip flexor strains. So this is a time for him to get his body felt out, feel what works, what doesn't work, so that he's not missing a lot of time, because that's been his problem, right? Outside of that 2023 season, he has been injury prone, and to nip that in the bud real quick, that would be absolutely great if they could get him, healthy on 100%. Brett Beatty, he tweaked his hamstring not too long ago, so maybe about a couple weeks ago. So he's going a little at it a little bit slow. But you see him working at first base and working at all other positions, second base, third base. They're going to have him in right field as well at some point. Francisco Alvarez, we already know. Take your time with him as well. But the thing I thought that was very impressive, and you mentioned this in your video, was the fact that that Luis Robert Jr. hit a ball 150 miles per hour. So the power is still there. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And totally in lockstep with you. Look, Carlos Mendoza, the manager, of course, said it himself. If this guy can stay healthy, we got a really special player on our hands. And that is the case for Robert. If they can keep this guy on the field, hopefully he can tap into that potential that we saw just a little glimpse of in 2023 when he finished 13th in MVP voting with 38 home runs, nearly 100 RBIs. And the biggest thing that has held him out from those conversations, or even really being an above average player the last 2 years with Chicago, was his health. Failing to get into over 100 games, I believe, in both of the last 2 years. So again, just like we talked about with Lindor, if Lindor is not ready for the first week of opening day, I'm A-okay with that. In the case of Robert, if he's not ready to play spring training games immediately out of the gate and they want to ease him into that for the long-term interest of him being healthy over a full 162, that is what the Mets need to prioritize. Because I think at full health, 1 through 9, this could be a very dangerous, very dynamic lineup if everybody's able to stay on the field.
Yeah, on paper, it feels like a more balanced lineup. Like you said, if they're all healthy, if they hit to the back of their baseball card, they really are a more balanced lineup from top to bottom. So I hope that this, works out, and I hope that these guys can just stay healthy. We know there's going to be injuries throughout the season, but if these guys can stay healthy, it's pretty huge. Shout out to everyone in the chat. We got over 91 people in the room here. Shout out to the Sal Licata show showing up, being a part of the chat. Appreciate you, Sal, for being in here. Sal was on the show not too long ago, about a couple of weeks ago. So you mentioned Bo Bichette. We're going to get into him shortly in his third base debut. I know a lot of people were up in arms because of one error in spring training, but he's learning. So we'll get into that shortly. Before we wrap up here with some of these takeaways, Kodai Senga reaching 96 miles per hour, something that he really has not done. So great to see him hit 95. Christian Scott reaching 95 as well. These two pitchers are going to be very important to this organization. Kodai Senga, if he can be anything like he was at the beginning of last season, 2023, you're talking about top 2, top 3 type pitcher in this rotation that you have there. So he's got to get himself going. And Christian Scott, when you look at him, he's going to be depth in the minors to start the season. And I'm sure we'll see him at some point in the major leagues.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, that's the beauty of trading for Freddie Peralta this offseason, because now you have a guy that has legitimately proven to be a number 1 or at worst a number 2 for several years with the Brewers. You get Nolan McLean for year 2. Only 8 starts last year, but clearly looked like an ace and a guy that had the pedigree of being one of the top prospects in baseball now for a while. So you put those two things together at the top of the rotation, and you take so much pressure off of Kodai Senga to have to pitch the way he did in the first half of 2025 before the hamstring injury. I'm not even asking for him to pitch to a 1.5 ERA like he did those first 13 starts, but can he pitch to a 3.5 ERA? That'd be more than serviceable behind Nolan McLean if he continues the trajectory that he was on last year, plus what you're hoping out of Freddie Peralta after trading for him this offseason. So I've said it before, you get Senga, Sean Manaea, and David Peterson to pitch closer to their normal selves than what they did in the second half of 2025, and combine that with what we're expecting out of McLean and out of Peralta at the top of the rotation. And I feel like this could be one of the better rotations in all of Major League Baseball.
They have the talent, and all they really need to do is the back end, pitch 5 innings. I mean, do what Clay Holmes did, and you're right on par. If Manaea, David Peterson, who was really good in the first half of the season, if you could get those guys to pitch 5 innings like Clay Holmes did and give you quality starts, I think that this rotation will be good, and it gives rest to the bullpen that was decimated because these guys couldn't get past the second and third inning.
No doubt about it. And look, we'll touch on the bullpen, I'm sure, at some point, but it was just a house of cards collapsing under itself there in the second half, where, like you mentioned, the rotation couldn't go 5 innings, and you had to go to some of your bigger arms or more experienced arms earlier in the game than you would have liked to. And it just ended up inevitably, of course, becoming a disaster for this entire pitching staff. So I think there are some questions in the bullpen that we may not have answers to at the very moment now, but a lot of that can be alleviated by the starting rotation going out there, taking the ball every 5th day, not having to shuffle and, juxtaposition it the way they did in 2025, and just being more consistent than what we got toward the end of last year.
Question from the chat from Pantrice1 saying, anyone else super worried about Manaea? Another new arm slot to try and prevent injury. Still has loose bodies in his arm, elbow, and lastly, lacking confidence. Honestly, worries him more than Senga does.
Me personally, I feel like it's a clean slate for Sean Manaea. He's one of the good guys in the game. From everything I've ever seen of him in interviews and the little bit I got to interact with him this week in Port St. Lucie, this guy really cares. This guy really wants to go out and deliver. And I kind of said this last year when he came back from his injury. So originally, I believe it was the oblique injury in spring training that held him out for the first 4 months or 3.5 months. Then during his minor league rehab assignment is when he discovered the loose bodies in the elbow. And this is me just completely guessing, I guess. I can't think of a better word right now, but I think they basically said, look, Sean, you have the loose bodies in the elbow. If it doesn't hurt, they can't possibly get worse than they are right now.
Kind of like Seth Lugo.
Sure, exactly, right. And I think coming off the contract that he had just signed in the offseason, 3 years, $75 million, he almost felt like he owed it to the Mets and the fan base, almost out of guilt for having missed the first couple of months, to say, hey, if it can't get worse, then yes, I'm going to go out there, give it all that I have. But even Carlos Mendoza just said the other day in a press conference, it just seemed like he never felt like himself. So this is both me giving flowers to Sean Manaea for caring so much about his work, about his craft, but also just saying that I don't think he ever felt right last year, and hopefully this is a clean slate for him.
Yeah, all the way back from that game, I can remember in Kansas City where he had to pitch those final 4 or 5 innings, and that was kind of the jump start. He pitched well at the beginning. They lost the game, and he wasn't really the same after that first game that he played. That's the problem when these guys weren't pitching 5-6 innings. You're relying on Manaea to come back and be healthy, and he just wasn't at the right spot. You had Frankie Montas injured. It was just a trickle down effect of problems happening for that entire pitching staff, and that's why the Mets fell apart at the end and didn't make the postseason. Now, I want to get into some of the events that happened in the Mets spring opener on Saturday, starting off with Bo Bichette's third base debut. Look, and we'll see a lot of people post the errors that he's made during practice. You could tell that there's certain people that just have to get this out there, to have to show the struggles here. Look, and during the game, I didn't even think this was such a bad play from him. That liner off of Connor Norby at third base to hit to him, and it throws to first. Maybe it wasn't the perfect throw, but he gets it to first base, and it just ended up going through Jose Rojas's glove. And he hit the runner, and it went through the glove, and it ended up being an error for not for Bo Bichette, but for Jose Rojas. And look, I didn't see that as such a big deal that everyone was getting upset about. It's his first game at third base. He's got to learn the position better here and now than in the regular season.
100% agreed. This is the time to work out all those issues, all those kinks, get comfortable at a new position. I was sitting on the third base line, maybe 4 rows from Bo Bichette when he fielded that ball. And my first thought was, I can't believe he even was able to get a glove on it. Very nearly had to go over the third baseline to get to it. And then to cross body throw it across the diamond to an inexperienced first baseman. How you could fault Bo Bichette for that is comical to me. And like you said, there are people that either are Mets fans and enjoy being miserable, or there are just people that want to troll the Mets because unfortunately that's kind of been our lot in life for a long time. So I would just say to Mets fans, those that actually truly love the Mets, don't read too much into it, because I think that it's being overblown, a tough play to a guy that is not likely to ever see time in the big leagues on this roster, over at first base. Like I said, Bichette putting in some early work the other day at camp. Not saying he's going to win a gold glove at third, but I think he's going to be more than serviceable at the hot corner.
Well, everybody in the chat, Aaron Manning saying Bo will be fine. Game for War saying a real first baseman knows that a tag isn't needed. Jeff Cohen, Bo will be fine. Media needs to report something negative about the Mets. And I did a podcast, my guy Ant, saying Bo will be more than adequate at third base. It's funny. And I go back to what Jeff Cohen said about the being negative about the Mets and the media. How long have we been hearing this during the offseason? One, because they let Pete Alonso go, who wasn't a great first baseman to begin with. I mean, he was adequate at first base. He was able to, dig out some balls that were poorly thrown, but he had his struggles at first base, and the Mets wanted to go in a different direction, and they're trying this experiment with Jorge Polanco at first. They're trying this experiment with Bo Bichette at third, and all we've been hearing is that this is not going to work, or everyone has a problem with it. Meanwhile, they just threw a first base glove at Nick Castellanos, and the Padres are being lauded for this. I can't understand it. Like, I understand getting at the Mets at some point. If these guys struggle, obviously we're going to hear it, right? No matter what, we're going to hear it. But obviously, if it doesn't work out, it's an experiment that didn't work out for David Stearns, and he's going to have to, talk to that and explain himself for making those moves. But, these guys haven't even gotten a chance. Jorge Polanco hasn't even gotten to game time yet. Bo Bichette just played his first game. I mean, they're learning the position. A-Rod got an opportunity to learn position. The Yankees and the media kill the Yankees for moving the better shortstop in Alex Rodriguez to third over Derek Jeter. No, they didn't.
No. But again, like I said, we are the Mets, and unfortunately it's an easy punchline, and it generates clicks for a lot of writers or whatever people out there on social media. Totally agree with you. But, I think the biggest reason why maybe there is such backlash is just simply because of the statements that David Stearns made after the 2025 season, where he preached run prevention, where he was trying to, hopefully get better defensively. Meanwhile, signing 2 guys to play positions on the infield that they've never played before. So I am willing to be patient with it, but I will say this. The Mets also have some backup options at first base in the case of Jorge Polanco. We just heard Carlos Mendoza say the other day in a presser, it's not exactly easy. Just go get a first base glove and learn to play the position. Now, I would say it's probably going to be easier for a guy that spent his entire career as a middle infielder to go to first base. I don't know for sure, but that would be my guess. But they also have an opportunity there for Brett Beatty to get reps at first base. Something that I've advocated for a long time now, if they truly believe in his bat. And if not Brett Beatty, because maybe the second half last year was just a mirage. I'm not here to say that or not, but it proven otherwise until proven otherwise. Maybe it's Mark Vientos that bounces back and is hitting 25 to 35 home runs like he did in 2024. And you can live with suspect defense at first because his bat is so good. So there are some other options. And that without even mentioning Ryan Clifford, who made his spring training debut today and is looking more and more MLB ready based on everything that I have discussed with other people in the Mets circles recently.
The fact that he's starting at AAA to start the season, the fact that Carlos Mendoza said we may see Jorge Polanco more often than not at DH, I think tells you a whole lot that if Ryan Clifford is playing as well as we think that he can, that he will eventually be up here to be the first baseman. Beatty can, like you said, Beatty can hold his own. He plays multiple positions. He can hold his own. Like you said with Mark Vientos, and this was the same thing with him in 2024 at third base. No one worried about his defensive problems at third base because he was hitting bombs and being a clutch hitter in the postseason. No one cared about that. Once last year happened and he struggled, that's when you realize that he wasn't that good of a third baseman. But like you said, if he could just, hit home runs, score RBIs, and do his job, he'll be fine and adequate at first base, and we'll forget about the defensive shortcomings that he has.
Yeah, no doubt. It's so funny because I just saw a stat today. Ryan Howard, if of course we know he tortured us as a Philly, he ended up finishing his career with a 14.9 WAR, which I won't go into. I don't know how the audience here appreciates wins above replacement, but the dude led the National League in home runs on 3 different occasions and in RBIs on 2 or 3 others, but was such a horrendous defender at first base. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's a little give and take. Okay, yes, he's going to hurt you sometimes in the field, but if he's hitting 30 to 35 home runs and driving in 100 RBIs, hopefully you can make up for it enough and have a good late inning defensive replacement for whoever that may be. So there's a lot of different ways to win games. I do believe in defense, especially late in games and in October. But you don't necessarily get to October without that offensive production that some of those names we just listed provide.
And we're not going to stop hearing about Pete Alonso and his power because obviously he hit 2 home runs in spring already. And the only thing that could happen is that Mark Vientos finally hits his potential of hitting 30 home runs in a season. Yeah, it's not the 40 to 50 home runs that you could possibly get from Pete, but he's got power enough to provide either half or a little more than half of what the production we were getting from Pete Alonso.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, the DH spot is up for grabs. What will happen with Jorge Polanco based off of Mendoza's comments the other day? I am not sure. Maybe he is in line to become the regular DH, but Vientos has every opportunity in the world to steal that job. It all depends on if he's going to hit. If he does that, then great. I think the Mets lineup is completely transformed if you get the 2024 version of Vientos versus the one that we saw last year. But I don't think there's going to be any shortage of home runs or power in this lineup just simply because Pete is gone. I think we're going to get it in a variety of different ways where last year in center, it was a void, a black hole where Cedric Mullins, Tyrone Taylor were getting the majority of reps. Tough to replace 25 from Nimmo and left. Obviously, it's not a seamless transition, but Nimmo's now the left, or I'm sorry, Soto is now the left fielder. So what happens in right field? I think you can feel pretty good about whatever it ends up being, whether it's Talkman or if it is Carson Benj out of the gate. So I think it's just spread out and kind of dispersed a little bit differently, which, let's be honest, how many times last year, especially those 0-75, that stretch of losing every game after trailing after the 8th inning, man. You saw the 5 through 8 coming up, the 6 through 9 in the order coming up, and you knew they had no chance. I think it's going to be very different this year because it's more evenly dispersed throughout the entire order.
Yeah, I can't believe how bad they were. Late inning games, not being able to rally. You knew the game was over once they couldn't come back from that. And the fact that they couldn't hit with runners in scoring position, 2, couldn't hit with runners in scoring position, and 2 outs. I mean, how many times did we see the bases loaded, even without there being 1 or 2 outs? Sometimes there were no outs, and they never came through. What a frustrating, season to have to deal with that. Obviously, a reason why Eric Chavez is not the hitting coach right now, and they moved on from him. So, we'll see how they are able to fix that. Now, another thing that happened in that spring opener, very impressive showings from Brandon Waddell and AJ Ewing. Brandon Waddell, 2 innings pitched, didn't give up a hit, had 3 Ks against 6 batters. I got to ask you, do you think that Waddell has a chance to make this opening day roster coming out of the bullpen?
I do. And the reason I'll say that, though, is mostly because if there's anything I learned from 2025, it's that you need as many arms as you can get. Um, the Mets are going to go through a ton of arms, a ton of names from the beginning of the year to the end. I believe March 26th is opening day through whatever, September 30th is the final game of the regular season. And then even the bullpen for October, should they be fortunate enough to make it, is going to probably look different. I think we're going to see the development of guys in the system like Dylan Ross and Ryan Lambert have an impact on this team. But out of the gate, I can see Waddell making the team, just like I could see Craig Kimbrell making the team.
Yeah.
Because if you even only get 2 serviceable weeks from guys like that, optionable, or guys that are you're comfortable DFAing at some point, it still serves a purpose. So this is not me to say that Waddell doesn't have the ability to stay on the roster the entire year. That was a very impressive performance the other day. But the Mets need to utilize all the arms that they possibly can, because we saw last year with the rash of injuries they had and just malperformance from others, that you need to have as many arms expendable and at your disposal as you possibly can. So wishing the best to Brandon Waddell, and that was definitely a solid debut and impression the other day.
Mets are going to have that gas ready for that taxi cab, because like you said, Brandon Waddell, will probably see Austin Warren, the whole crew. You mentioned Ryan Lambert, the young kids, Dylan Ross, Jonathan Pintaro. He's another name that we could possibly see part of this bullpen. So the Mets are really going to, outside of staying 100% healthy, which, that just doesn't happen these days in baseball. You're going to see these guys come up and down. And that's why during the beginning of the offseason, I don't tend to freak out when you see these, like when you see David Stearns sign these middle relievers and minor league pitchers to just have depth and be able, sometimes you even just need a body to take a beating so that these guys can have a day off or heal. Like your rest of your bullpen may need the day off because they've gone through a long game, and you need someone to take that beating for a game. You need some of those guys sometimes.
Yeah, no doubt. So in the beginning of the year, I think the first offseason addition was Joey Gerber, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, a lot of Mets fans were like, what? Excuse me? Who? So, yeah, of course, us as Mets fans do have a tendency to overreact at times. But to your point, sometimes you do need a guy to kind of just wear it. Unfortunately, it seemed that was the case far too
much.
Yeah, last year. So hopefully that will not be the situation this year. We did hear in the middle of the offseason, maybe about a month and a half ago, Will Salmon with a great report saying the Mets front office did not feel like they did a good job building last year's bullpen, not because of talent, but because they didn't feel they had enough optionable arms, enough guys with fluidity to go up and down to the minors, etc. I do think they've set themselves up in a better position this year, including the likes of a guy like Gerber, like Craig Kimbrell, like some of the other names that kind of escape me right now.
And I agree with this comment from Aaron Manning in the chat. The Luis Garcia in the bullpen, very underrated move. I think he's going to play a big role. He's got postseason experience. Another guy, another big move for David Stearns for this bullpen, and he didn't even cost that much. So it's nice to see, David Stearns still able to get through this bullpen even after losing Edwin Diaz and able to come up with Luke Weaver. Luis Garcia, Devin Williams, even Craig Kimbrell. I mean, that could possibly be an underrated move in itself.
Yeah, Kimbrel had a really great strikeout rate last year. Now, walks were something that plagued him a lot. He only pitched 12 innings with the Braves, I believe it was. But Kimbrel, if he can just minimize the walks and still keep that elite strikeout rate that he was boasting last year, could definitely, like I said, maybe it's only 2 or 3 weeks where he's serviceable to you, but it gets you through the rest of the season because maybe you don't have to tap into your system earlier than you would like to. Maybe you don't have to make other roster moves and manipulations that you didn't want to at that moment. So it's all about acquiring, honing talent. In terms of the Luis Garcia signing, very different pitchers, but kind of reminds me of Darren Oliver from the 2006 team.
One of my favorite bullpen pieces, man.
Yeah. Longtime
love
vet.
Darren Oliver.
Yeah, guy that's just kind of been around for a while, that's been there and seen it all and done it. And maybe it seems like he's on his last leg, but what can you squeeze out of him now? Like maybe he ends up being here the entire year, maybe he doesn't, but kind of reminds me of that kind of Darren Oliver kind of mold.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I even think, LaTroy Hawkins as well, another bullpen
Great
piece
call.
that they got in there. And shout out to Matt A.B. Ibanez from Till Mets to His Part. Make sure you catch that show every Wednesday, talking about Craig Kimbrell possibly wearing a Tom Glavine shirt underneath of that jersey. I hope he's a bit better for us if we have an opportunity to bring him to the roster. Yeah, man, Tom Glavine, we really throwing it back.
I was having a great Sunday night here with you, Ant, until that comment. Yeah, you had to bring up Tommy Glavine. Okay.
We're gonna have to kick Amy out of the chat here after that one. The AJ Ewing, I mean, he played center field, had a sac fly to get the Mets on the board, threw a runner out at third. Now with Jet Williams out of the organization, traded to Milwaukee, and with Carson Bench moving to right field, this guy, AJ Ewing, is possibly the future at center field. We don't know what's going to happen with Luis Robert Jr. after this season is over. So, having a guy like AJ Ewing, another kid, possibly being ready to come up and being ready to be a part of this team at some point.
Yeah. How exciting is it to see a guy like him? I mean, I think he's going to pretty quickly adopt the nickname Flash. 70 stolen bases, I think it was last year in the minors. Tremendous defensively in center field, obviously throughout that runner at third base on the overthrown throwing stolen base attempt, whatever you want to call it, from the catcher, right? Yeah, I am really excited for him. It does not sound like he's probably going to see the big leagues this year, barring some crazy step up from him and some injury situations in AAA and the big leagues for the Mets. But I am really excited. And like you said, there's no certainty about what Robert's status will be. The Mets can decide to exercise his option after 2026. There's really no certainty even about baseball, period, in 2027, True. Right? But
yeah,
he is definitely someone that you got to be excited about. And like I said earlier about changing the core, changing the overall feeling in the clubhouse this year, just kind of moving on from that previous core of Mets. They were not exactly the most athletic, the most fast, or keen on stealing bases. It seems like this is a part of David Stearns' vision of athletic guys that can go and catch the ball, can steal a ton of bases, put the ball in play. So I'm very excited about AJ Ewing.
Yeah, versatility at positions as well. David Stearns has really owned in on that youth movement and getting the most out of these players where, you can plop them in at multiple positions, and let's see it work out. I want to see it with these kids coming up from the minor leagues. Carson Bench being the first one, I hope, that possibly makes this opening day roster. Now, I didn't get to cover this on my last show last Sunday because, obviously Steve Cohen talked on Monday, but a lot of important stuff came out of Steve Cohen's mouth. Every time he talks, something important comes out of there. So I want to get into that with you. And on not making the postseason and winning a World Series, Steve Cohen said he was absolutely annoyed. Every year it goes by, he gets frustrated. I'm really committed to this team. I know how much fans care. I know we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of 1986, and that's just too long. I love the 1986 Mets. I didn't get to see them win, but you watch the videos, you hear about how great that team was. And even I am a little tired of the 1986 Mets. Not in the fact that I want to have our own celebration finally. It's like you said, it's been too long. This is the 40th anniversary and we still don't have a championship. Love the 1986 Mets, but I want us to finally celebrate a new championship with this Mets team.
Yeah, without a doubt. I saw someone wearing a Gary Carter jersey the other day, and it almost doesn't even resonate or click in my head anymore from 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I was younger. And I was like, dang, that's royalty. It's
Mhm.
almost like, when is it going to be Nimmo or Alonso? Obviously, those are not going to be the guys now that we celebrate our next World Series with, but that was always the goal for the last couple
Yeah.
years. Um, just to speak to Steve Cohen and his stewardship as the owner of the Mets, two things I noticed this week. First, 2 weeks ago, it was Alex Cohen going out during open practice and just greeting fans, just coming up to us and speaking. I did decided not to speak with her, but she just went up to fans as if we were just friends. And you cannot ask for anything more out of ownership from Steve or from Alex to be as just open and friendly as they are. And then, of course, for Steve to always being willing to open his wallet and spend on the best and brightest talents in the league to try to field a winning team. So I completely agree with his frustration, and I appreciate his comments for sharing that sentiment that we all here have as fans as well. And he's done so much. I mean, even just investing in the new minor league complex that they just broke ground on a couple days
Yep.
ago in Port St. Lucie. This guy is fully in on trying to build a winner. And it maybe has not happened at the speed that either us as fans wanted or he as the owner wanted, but I do have faith in it.
You mean to tell me that all the people on X telling us that Steve and Alex are worse than Fred and Jeff Wilpon, they're not correct?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? I know who could have believed that, an $89 million payroll in 2012 or whatever it was, right? Yeah, can't believe it, but or calling out two of your brightest superstars, homegrown guys, and Jose Reyes and David Wright. Yeah, no, I digress, but you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm alluding to, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Jeff Cohen in the chat saying Alex Cohen is the best. I literally bumped into her and she was so nice about it, even took a picture with me. Aaron Manning saying, love T Alex. She's a sweetheart. I got to meet her at the entranceway at Citi Field. And like Jeff and Aaron is saying, she's one of the nicest people you can talk to. It stinks that she had to shut down her social media because, some fans don't know how to behave. And it sucks, but it had to happen. These two have provided so much, from old timers day to retiring numbers and having more players be put in the Hall of Fame that would not have been done under the previous regime. And we got into two postseasons. Obviously, one did not work out at the beginning in 2022. 2024, we got within two games of the World Series. This takes time building. If you want to build, and like people are talking about this East Coast Dodgers team, this takes time. They did not become a championship team like they are now. It took over a decade for them to become who they were. And he even talks about it. He goes, the Dodgers have the ability to spend. So do I, by the way. And I know that got a chuckle out of a lot of the media. He goes, they built a great team, but I think we've built a great team as well. We're going to be really competitive this year. And the goal is to meet them somewhere along the way in the playoffs. Like the desire is there, right? The desire is there from Cohen. He even talked about the roster turnover, saying goodbye is always tough, but saying hello is kind of fun as well. He's very transparent about what this team and what he wants from them, and he's done that with David Stearns at the helm, and David Stearns has been pretty much transparent as well. It just, do the fans believe what David Stearns is saying? That's the problem, because David Stearns, to me, has been right on since the beginning.
Yeah, no doubt. And something I wanted to mention in that previous answer thing I just said was we just got another article from Will Salmon this evening, I believe it was, about how the Brandon Nimmo trade kind of all went down. and Steve Cohen had communication with Brandon Nimmo. Now, we all know at this point, the Mets did not shop Nimmo, but the Rangers called the Mets because they liked Nimmo so much. And so how Will worded it was essentially that Cohen spoke with Nimmo and said, I have enjoyed you so much as not only a player, but as a person. I think we've built a close relationship, but David is the man that I have entrusted to run this organization. And David has told me it would be in the team's best interest to make this move. So I wish you the best, essentially. So I'm kind of cutting it short. My whole point here is Steve Cohen said when he hired David Stearns that he was going to be in charge of the baseball operations and that Cohen is simply the money behind it all. And that's exactly what you want out of an owner. I don't know about you, Amp. I am a long-suffering Jets fan. So Woody Johnson getting his hands on anything having to do with the Jets spells disaster. Steve Cohen did not grow up as a baseball guy like David Stearns did and go through all the rankings of it to become what he is now, the president of baseball operations. And it is a breath of fresh air just to know that Cohen is entrusting David Stearns with the day-to-day baseball operations and decisions. And I don't think you can ask for anything better.
It didn't happen overnight either, right? I mean, under Sandy Alderson and all the general managers that they went through at the beginning, Steve Cohen kind of felt like he had to be a part of the mix there with, getting Francisco Lindor the contract extension, even almost signing Carlos Correa while he was on vacation. Eventually not making that move is probably the right move. I mean, because you'd be bogged down in that and we probably wouldn't even have Juan Soto if he makes that move. So letting finally getting the guy, it always makes me laugh because there are fans that think that he's going to get fired. He's not. David Stearns is not going anywhere because this is the guy that Steve Cohen wanted. He wanted him since 2022. Remember the search for trying to find someone. Theo Epstein wasn't available. Billy Beane didn't want it. And David Stearns was on that list of guys that he wanted. And he finally gets the guy. He's not going to get rid of him after 2 seasons, especially after the first season was so successful. You muted for a second.
Sorry. As far as I remember, that whole situation in 2022 going was that the Brewers did not give the Mets permission to seek David Stearns, even though it would have been a promotion. So yes, this was Steve Cohen's white whale. This was his Moby Dick, if you will, for those that prefer that reference. So no, I don't think David Stearns is going anywhere. And guess what? If you didn't enjoy the way that the Brewers beat the brakes off of the Mets last year and went to the NLCS, forget about how it went against the Dodgers, the juggernaut that they are. Well, that team was entirely built by David Stearns. So that is what we hopefully have to look forward to here in Queens.
Now, here's the big topic of discussion from Steve Cohen's press conference, and it was on naming a captain. He says, as long as I'm owning the team, there will never be a captain. That was my decision. My view is the locker room is unique and let the locker room sort it out year in, year out. I think, honestly, for the best. I really do. Only 2 major league teams have captains right now. Aaron Judge on the Yankees, Salvador Perez on the Kansas City Royals. There's only been 4 captains in Mets history. 2 of them played on the team together as co-captains, Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter. Yeah, John Franco in the late 90s, and obviously David Wright. Interesting to me enough, some wanted David Wright to hand over the captaincy to Francisco Lindor on his day of retirement, which I never saw happening, and a lot of people thought was going to happen. Like I said, I think this is for the best. Baseball's a different animal. You don't need a captain. These guys can lead by example. You see it with Francisco Lindor. You're seeing it now with Juan Soto. There's veteran presence with Sean Manaea as well in the pitching staff. it's not needed, right? Like I think we can agree on that.
100%. Look, I said this about this time last year, when, of course, coming off the 2024 playoff run, the runner-up MVP season for Francisco Lindor, when all the craze was for him to be captain. I said, why put a title on things? Why complicate everything? And I even did reference at that time, not to pat myself on the back, but I did think that Brandon Nimmo or Pete Alonso might feel some kind of way about it, having been homegrown Mets, the longest tenured Mets at that time. And as it turns out, yeah, that's exactly the case. Brandon Nimmo kind of got on his feels about it. So I think it's the right decision. Why put semantics on it? You do not win or lose any more or less games by having a captain. So I think it's a bad idea. And I love that you actually referenced the co-captains of Keith Hernandez and Gary Carter, because being the absolute nut job that I am, I fall asleep to watching 86 Mets videos all the time. Uh, the Mets made Keith the captain, and not to disparage Gary Carter at all.
Oh, I know that. Yep. I know where you're going.
The story kind of goes, it was almost kind of out of respect to Gary, but they definitely looked at Mex Keith as the actual captain of the team. And so again, my point of bringing that up is, why put a title on somebody? Lead by example. And what I'll just leave it with is this, not Mets related, but the 2016 World Series, after the rain delay in the Game 7 for the Cubs and Indians. Sorry, Guardians now, but Indians at that time, I believe.
Yeah.
It was Jason Hayward who stepped up and made that speech in the middle of the rain delay. Did he have a captain title? Did he have a C on his jersey? No. So lead by example. Hopefully you have a good group of veterans. You don't need to put the title on somebody.
No, and it only leads to more clubhouse strife that the team doesn't need. We've heard, we didn't want to believe, we heard all the stuff you're talking about with the Nimmo too, about being named captain. Like, it just sucks that this is what we've come to, where there can't be named a captain, but it just makes sense. It's not needed. You have leaders in the clubhouse, you follow, you listen to them, and you'll be fine. David Wright, totally different scenario of a guy who's been there forever, was leading a bunch of young kids in 2015 and throughout that rough time, being a Met fan. And I don't mind going down and him being the last captain, being the captain of this Mets. It was a well-deserved honor, especially for the other guys in Franco, as well as Carter and Hernandez. Now, before Carson in the chat saying, I want a clubhouse of veteran leaders, voices, and young players who are mentored. This isn't England. No one needs a throne to be bestowed upon them like some fans wanted Wright to do on his day. That's something that still drives me nuts, that fans wanted him to pass the torch to Francisco Lindor on his day. Like, it just, I know it seems like a fairy tale type story, but it just wasn't the right move. I'm glad they didn't do it then. And I'm glad that Steve Cohen kind of really took leadership under his own and just said, no, we're not ever doing this ever again. Oh, you're moody again.
Anthem, sorry, I'm the worst guest ever. Anyway, I think that was a power move by Steve Cohen to kind of nip it in the bud, as you said. Take that pressure off of Lindor. He doesn't have to field questions about it anymore. Neither does Juan Soto. That's it. It's already been decided. There will not be a captain while Steve Cohen is the owner of this team. So I think that was if you want to call him a boss, he's technically their employer, a guy protecting his employees, where let's just focus on playing baseball. Let's forget about all these other outliers that the media or fans want to stir up. Just go out and be you. Just go be the best. And hopefully it's going to be good enough.
Yeah. It was Maureen saying that would have diminished Wright's day. Aaron Manning saying good for Steve to come out and end all the captain talk and really get rid of there is no I in team. So it's nice to do that. Carson saying lead by example and win games, please and thank you. Now, before we wrap up the show, a couple of news and happenings surrounding this team from Queens. The Mets signed Mike Tauchman. You alluded to it a little earlier on in the show. Minor league deal last season, 263 batting average, 9 homers, 40 RBIs, a 756 OPS, 1.9 WAR, and 335 at bats. His walk and chase rate is among the best in the league. Baseball Savant has him at league average when it comes to defense, but he'll get that opportunity to win right field. And I think it's just another a name to, if Carson Bench doesn't work out to start the season, at least you got a guy like Mike Tauchman. You also have MJ Melendez in there as well. Brett Beatty will get some time to play right field, Tyrone Taylor. But even so, this pushes Carson Bench to play better, even better in spring training, to have, a veteran presence to kind of challenge him in Mike Tauchman, who's, probably towards, the latter half of his career. MJ Melendez, who was a top prospect, just like Carson Bench at one point at catcher, although had to move to the outfield, but another guy who has an opportunity to make this roster and be a part of this team.
Yeah, no doubt. And to start with Tauchman, first of all, I couldn't believe he was still a free agent. Never mind that the Mets were able to sign him on a minor league deal. I mean, 359 on base percentage over the last 3 seasons now. Look, he's not going to wow you and hit 25 or 30 home runs or anything like that. But what's the old Moneyball quote? He gets on base.
Yep.
So, I mean, to fill out your position player group with a bat like that, a guy like that, that's pretty good. You could do a lot worse than Mike Tauchman out there. And then getting into the whole conversation about who wins the opening day right fielder job. Look, we hope it's Carson Bench, and he just absolutely dominates in Grapefruit League action this spring, and then is hitting home runs left and right to begin the year with the Mets. But he also has very limited amount of time in AAA last year, and he kind of struggled. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for Benj to actually get another month, maybe even 2 under his belt in Syracuse, and let Mike Tauchman or MJ Melendez, like you mentioned, or maybe even Jared Young, although I think probably lesser on our wish list to get some time out there. But that's the luxury that you give yourself. And I said earlier about how it's a collection of talent in terms of the bullpen arms and the pitching staff. It's the same with the position players too. The Dodgers have done this for so many years, finding diamonds in the rough. Tauchman's had a little bit better of a career than some of the names I'll mention now, but look what Justin Turner became with the Dodgers at one point. Look what Max Muncy has become and turned into for them. Even Tommy Edman. You get guys like that maybe other teams overlook some of their specific talents and can really flourish with you. So I love the signing of Tauchman, and I think it can only benefit them from having a guy like that.
The Mets also broke ground on their new minor league complex, 55,000 square foot facility, batting cages, weight room, hydrotherapy room. They got the locker room for the minor leagues in there. David Stern said it's going to cement us as the preeminent development organization in baseball. I mean, they're already there with the farm system being as strong as it is in a top five farm system. And now to have this facility, would the Wilpons have made this facility?
No, I don't believe they would have. No, I don't think they'd have had the foresight that Steve Cohen has. It's funny because you just mentioned that. I knew about, of course, them breaking ground on this new complex, and the thought just popped into my head. We saw how the Mets were able to get Elian Pena last year, and what a get that was. The Yankees, of course, going through some serious issues with their international free agent situation, but the Mets were able to steal Wandy Esigian from him. And this complex only, I think, adds to their attractiveness to those international free agents, those 15, 16, 17-year-olds. I mean, the Phillies just signed an 11-year-old the other day, I'm pretty sure, right?
I did hear something about that. I was like, is this true? Or
I didn't ask Grok, but I think it was legit. I think it is true. So all this just to say, the Mets have made a commitment to building this team from the ground up, from a solid foundation that starts with the farm system, that starts with drafting, it starts with international free agent signings. And by putting them in the best possible situation to succeed with the best technology and the best equipment at their disposal, I mean, like I said earlier, what more can you ask for from this ownership?
Carson in the chat saying Will Pons would have knocked down the old complex and rebuilt it with a large tent and 10 lawn chairs. Aaron Manning saying Uncle Steve is making us a premium destination. G Money Stacks saying Will Pons are the cheapskates of all time. And I think every Met fan should agree with that, but there are some that don't, which is boggles my mind. Carlos Ortiz saying the Wilpons would have given the players a membership to Bally's if it still existed. I wouldn't doubt that either. I wouldn't doubt that one bit. One last thing, Howie Rose, little change in his schedule. He will not be traveling with the team anymore. He'll only be doing about 84 games, which is the 81 at home, along with the 3 at the Bronx for the Subway Series. But he will be partaking in all postseason games, and he'll do that traveling. Obviously, the health has been the issue over the last couple of years, and I think even he said he's kind of been doing this year by year with his contract. So he hopes that the Mets can win a World Series, and then he'll put a kibosh to the retirement and end his career on that note. Been calling games since 1995. Started radio in 2006. I remember him on Fox Sports Net watching those games in 98, 99, 2000. I remember all that stuff. That's where I first got my taste of Howie Rose, was on TV.
Yeah. Look, I know nothing else but Howie Rose. And in the case of television, Gary, Keith, and Ron. So I wake up pretty much every offseason and am just fearful that any of those voices may leave my life. So I am happy that Howie's going to be here at least for home games and for the few games out at Yankee Stadium this year. I think 71 years old, you mentioned. So look, I'm just going to take it and enjoy it as much as I can. Such a great call. So just knows how to weave stories in and out of the actual call of the game as well. I mean, Vince Scully, just legendary status. So I am so happy that he's still here right now. And I hope he'll continue to be able to do it as long as his health permits it. And the same for the rest of the TV crew. Of course, Keith just signed that 3-year extension with SMY. So that's really exciting. They've obviously dropped a little back on their road schedules as well. But I've said it before, we're spoiled as Mets fans with the best broadcast booth in the game in terms of television and in terms of radio. So hopefully the Mets will win a World Series for these guys before all is said and done.
Yeah, love Gary, Keith, and Ron. I have been starting to listen to the radio portion a lot more. It's a lot harder having to tell that story, right? You could see on TV, you're seeing what you're watching, but when you're listening onto the radio, you need as descriptive as possible from these broadcasters. And Howie Rose has been doing that so well for the last couple of decades. Was the voice of hockey as well. The Mato, if people remember. So I like him, as well as Keith Ratt, who's been on this show not too long ago. Great tandem together. And I wish nothing but, the best for Howie Rose and his health, and hope that he's okay and gets that moment where the Mets win a World Series and he can, ride off into the sunset that way. Tony, man, this has been such a fun show to do with you. We definitely got to do it again. I hope you enjoy the rest of spring training. I know you're out there for the month. Let everyone know where they can catch all of your work as well as your social media.
Yeah, definitely. I had a great time. Thank you for having me. We will definitely be doing it again very soon. It's pretty much Tony Metro on all the different platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. YouTube is, of course, where I hope most people go to, but it all kind of, funnels in to each other. But if you just look up Tony Metro or Tony Metro plus Mets at the end of it, that's the best way to find me.
And you'll be able to find all this information in the description of this episode, all of Tony's socials, as well as his YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe to that. You can follow me on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can follow me personally at Ant Rivera 86. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you want to listen to it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That'll be up later this evening and early into the morning. But if you want to be a part of the chat and the conversation like you were today, you're doing that right here on YouTube as well as Twitter, but mostly come on over to YouTube. That's where all the fun happens. And you can help out the show. Super chat, super stickers, and all of that fun stuff is a part of the YouTube. That'll do it for Subway to Shea for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in, for being a part of this show with me and Tony. And I like to end the show always with Let's Go Mets.
Let's go Mets.